Call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Oh, never mind. First item is hearing for the CDBG. Does anybody like to speak to this?
Good evening, Brett Wagner, Governmental Assistance Services in Lawrence. There was a publication in the paper required by CDBG for this program. Some cities asked me to read it aloud, other cities, I've never done a public hearing here, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So if you want me to read it aloud, I will. If not, all you have to do is collect public comment. I'm here to answer questions from you, from the business owners, anyone that's interested in the program.
Can you let the council know what this is for?
Sure, absolutely. The CDBG program through the state of Kansas has received some COVID resiliency money, and they are giving out grants to cities and counties. The cities and counties apply for the money, and then they decide how to pass it out to their businesses. They have to be eligible businesses. Businesses have to have been in business as of March 1st of 2020, so prior to the worst part of COVID, I guess is what you would say. Those businesses also have to qualify as having 51% low to moderate income individuals employed at their business. That's something that we'll help them with the paperwork and determine whether they're eligible or not. And then the other requirement is that they use the money, kind of some loose terms, but they use the money to make them more resilient to another potential shutdown, whether that would be from COVID or something similar, whatever could possibly happen that would be along those lines. Each city or county is eligible for up to $150,000. There's $2 million available throughout the state, so not everybody that applies is going to get money this time, like the first 3 rounds several years ago. This is actually competitive, so we need to talk to your businesses. We need to make sure that people are interested and that they have a plan for the money so that we can prepare an application that is competitive against the other ones throughout the state. Full disclosure, we're working with a few more communities. We think 3, maybe 4 to put applications together. We regularly work with a bunch of different communities in Northeast Kansas, and I've worked with Glenn on some other projects recently, and I just wanted him to be aware of the opportunity. So I just want to present that all to you and let you chew on it a little bit. We had to have the public hearing by the 15th of the month. That was a requirement. The application's due at the end of the month. So if we are going to do an application, I would need Glenn to kind of give me the go-ahead to get started on it, within a week to 10 days or so. That would give us enough time to get it finished up by the end of the month. Any questions about uses, eligible businesses, the application itself, the program? Any business owners, public comments? Very good.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Take care.
All right, we'll close that hearing, open up the regular scheduled meeting. First item on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
I move we approve the agenda.
Second.
Been moved and second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Been moved and second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Is there anybody here that'd like to speak to an item that's not on the agenda? Seeing none, move on to business. First item is Heritage Final Plat. Russ.
Good evening, everybody. Heritage Subdivision 2B was heard at Planning Commission on July 11th. It was approved with a 4-0 vote in favor of moving it on to City Council. We're here to answer any questions. I know the engineer of record is here, as well as our staff engineer as well tonight. So,
Any changes on our plan since it was last in the
no. So, all right, thanks.
Okay, first I have, looks like Sherry Taylor signed up to speak. You can step
Hi.
up to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Hi, I'm Sherry Taylor, and I live at 1808 North 300 Road. I wrote y'all a letter. Hopefully you got it. I don't really have anything to add. I just came to listen to see how it went tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Sherry. Next person signed up is Rick Woodhead. Please step to the podium, state your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Rick Woodhead. I live at 1811 North 300 Road. Once again, like Sherry, I wrote you a letter. I don't know if any of you've all received it. I hope you have read it. Once again, I just ask for you to value the people at 300 Road, their lifestyle, their needs out there, not just possible future needs of possible future residents of a neighborhood that can be very crowded and not in consideration of the regular rest of the area that surrounds it. I'm just really sad that there's been no chance for you all to give us any leeway on lot sizes or anything else. You know, I did ask for only approving phase 1 tonight to give us more time to work on the phase 2 part that they asked for. I don't know if that's something you'd even consider. I wish it would be. I'd like to ask Roger Johnson a question, if that's okay.
Actually, the time is met for the council.
Okay. Well, it's relevant to this proceeding, but that's fine. All right, and that's all I have to say, I guess. Thank you.
Anybody else here would like to speak to this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment section of that agenda item, open up council discussion.
I have some questions. The diagrams and things that we got in the packet, since I'm not an engineer and I'm sure it's all about the same. I have two concerns was, one is for the green space, to have green space within this project. And the other is, I'm concerned about the runoff of the water, just because, I live in Santa Fe Drive. And when it rains really hard, the back of our beyond our property, it floods all the time. And it's even come up as close as to our property line. So I'm wondering, how is the water going to be directed that's going to go off of this addition?
Dean, you might have to step up here because I do not have those answers.
I apologize. One hearing aid's down, but you're just concerned about the water that runs behind Heritage Phase 1. On the plat, we've prepared or designed a detention facility to handle the water on the west side. That will collect everything up to the ridge that's near 56 Highway. There's a little bit of water that will drain off to the west that isn't detained, that it kind of on the very north end where it's over the ridge. But we've did a drainage study which BG's reviewed and acknowledged that we've reduced the peak discharge by 34% from the existing condition. So we've oversized the pond to significantly reduce that concerns of discharge to the west.
So that would never fill up?
The pond, yes, it would. It's designed to fill up within, a foot of the top. BG had a couple comments, and I've modified that. Started modifying the drainage basin a little bit based on that to add some freeboard. The other thing that I've done is with this that kind of got a two-stage discharge that when you look at, most people look at 100-year storms, but I've also got a smaller pipe, so smaller storms, don't inadvertently, provide or have drainage issues that you might normally just see with a big storm. So it's a two-stage system to both reduce peak discharge from small storms as well as large storms.
So all of the water in this goes into this pond, is that correct?
Not every bit. That you have some, much like on the east side, where it's right there and you just can't capture it. But I've accounted for that in the total quantity of discharge. We're going to have a berm on the west side in the area. Escapes me now. I got his name written down there. Gary, his property, a berm, so it doesn't discharge right towards his house. Everything south of there is caught in a detention pond. And again, there's a little bit at the very north end that drains into a ditch up there that isn't detained. But again, it's taken into the calculations that the total has a looking at, I think it's 34% that I was able to reduce the peak discharge during a 100-year storm event. So
Dean, what you're saying there is what the land is discharging right now in water, by doing these upgrades, it's going to reduce that water flow outside of that land by 34%.
it reduces the peak flow. You know, unfortunately, because we're creating an impervious surface every day, you know, that you can't always stop it or reduce it in every case, but the idea is that you reduce the peak discharges that, you know, the system is designed to do it, but you stretch it out over a 24-hour period instead of that all draining within a 1-hour period. That, you know, it flows longer and over longer duration than just one dump that you would see.
This little nook that you got right here, where it comes around and makes a loop and takes in 4 lots, is that a drain spot?
This area here, and because it's a long skinny, this piece here and this piece here. That is just an eyebrow where with the detention pond on the one side, it kind of produced an extra area. So those are just lots and that's just an eyebrow
Is
to
there
get
not
a
a drain
few.
line through there?
Excuse me?
There's not a drain line that goes down through there, Dean?
No, there is one right here that just picks up a short little area, and there's a drainage ditch to the east, and it doesn't cross any driveways or anything clear to the state lake. So it was a little bit there that was dumping out at this property boundary line.
Where's the green space at that was supposed to be?
This lot in here and this lot here that you see here.
Those are one on the north end and one on the.
Yeah, that is a storm line on a property line. So this is the green space here and this lot which continues up here on this space. So there are 2 lots that are green space here. And again, I think that's just a storm line or line there, but
And this makes no entry on the 300 road, is that correct?
at this point, what we've done is provided what I'll call a temporary cul-de-sac. We have dedicated the right-of-way for a future street that goes clear to 300, as well as dedicating the normal right-of-way on the south side of 300 road. So I guess the question is, that it will come up, that, you know, you probably had, you know, cul-de-sac, don't let them through, run the street through. One option that probably helps with the fire department the most is you put up a gate that has a Knox box that provides EMS people with the ability to get through there, or Public Works, if there's something going on, that they can open up the gate and it's a way of getting in and out without dumping any normal traffic on that property. Again, if there was some issue with the street, it might be for a day that they open up the gate and that's the way out. But it is, I have dedicated additional right-of-way, again, with a temporary cul-de-sac, because of the master plan for Baldwin shows it going, continuing, to 300 and on north of there in the master plan. So we couldn't really just completely just shut it off because that's a planned street going on north. So I guess we may need a little direction on, again, whether we gate it or just leave the cul-de-sac and put sinkers or something so people can't get through to 300 ground.
You resemble your father as you've gotten older.
Excuse me?
You resemble your father as you've gotten
I
older.
know. Thanks.
Mr. Woodhead, public comments over, this is the time for the
I just
council.
want a clarification on what he said. Is possible?
You can wait till after the meeting, but when we shut down public comment, that's the
I don't
time.
want to comment, I want to ask some questions to get clarification.
I get that.
So, EG made like 5 recommendations for their stormwater management plan, street access comments in the letter to, at least I'm looking at here, there's 5 different suggestions or recommendations. Have those been incorporated into this plan, or are those going to be?
They will be. I just got
Okay,
those
that's
comments
what I
today,
need.
but I can address them.
So the plan is to take these recommendations and incorporate them into the final?
Yes.
Okay.
And in one of them, I'll explain that this is the multifamily lot and then the commercial lot, but we are taking the water through our pond, and so you take into account the existing condition. We put pipes in place, but these 2 lots will be responsible for their own detention so that they don't exceed the existing conditions at this point. So we have to handle their water, but they will have, when they're developed, will have their
Part of
own
their plan
detention.
has to manage their water based
Yeah,
on
there was
whatever they put in there.
a comment I need to work on, that I'm working on with the big pond. The other pond that he mentioned, I can slide it down the hill. I was just real close, and so I didn't change everything, but I can address that other pond. And Jason, I'm trying to think of what the 5th one was.
Yeah, good evening, Jason Hoskinson, BG. I was going to clarify that, our comments, review comments were what I'd say pretty minimal and could be addressed in the design plan process and wouldn't really affect anything on the plat, so, if that makes sense.
It does, but we're looking for, once this body says go, we lose control about whether those recommendations ever make it, right? Because there's no other point where it comes back and says that you approved the final.
At the council level, I typically review with city staff, we review the public improvement plans
Yeah.
as well before it gets implemented to make sure that what the staff, or what the council approves here tonight makes it into there and is addressed. And then those would have to be approved by the city before they go and execute the project. So there is a layer of checks and balances there, but
I'm just trying to
from
make sure we understand
your,
what they are,
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So as far as the green space goes, is that where the retention ponds are?
There is some, the western portion is the detention pond. The center, and again, that is storm sewer, but those 2 lots are up above the detention pond. They're not part of the detention pond. So there would be, usable green space. The one thing with the pond, and you'll see it on, it's pretty slow filling, and it's not a wet pond or anything. So, it's not an instantaneous, hey, if they're playing down there, they get caught up in there. I kept it shallow. I try and make them as reasonably shallow as possible, just so you don't get into it's 7 foot deep or 8 foot deep. Now, the other one is a tad bit deeper, but it's real small, and it's on its own track for the pond that would be this lot here, and then the pipe shows up there. Again, it's a separate track for that detention pond. And the reason for that detention was that Mr. Woodhead property is there, and his driveway's near, and so I went back and looked at that and made sure that, that little area wasn't dumping excessive amount of water on him, so I put that pond there as well.
So is this, are the ponds, do they have like a fence around them or something?
They do not. Again, with the depth, there's not water in them. You've got about Well, depending on the pond, I'd have to look at the time, but the duration is fairly reasonably short, that they're not, that they get water in them and they're there for a week or two. It's more hours than days. And with the other one, if it's a matter of signage or something in that other one where the green space is, that, hey, this area is susceptible to flooding because it's a stormwater management area, but it's a big green space, and the size of it, you could have soccer fields or anything, down in the bottom. It'd still be useful green space. It's not just a dead space that wouldn't get used.
What do you think about small children?
Well, yeah, for the kids that are living in that subdivision.
No.
It's the same way we've done Fire Tree. There's three different detention ponds there.
I know the one where the senior development loan.
There's one there, yeah, the new one on the north end.
Yeah.
There's one there, the one we made into a fishing pond. And the one at the end of Houston, the new subdivision back there, is a detention pond.
And also in this pond, I generally use a trickle channel where the water's coming off the street, just so it doesn't sit in there and basically make it, unusable space because it stays wet all the time. And I believe it shows up on there that from the outlet to the pond outlet.
Any other questions for Dean?
Parking, these one side only, all the way around. Do we have a parking plan here?
I think that's on us.
I don't know, but it has to have,
Has to be wide.
yeah, be wide enough once they do it.
Well, yeah, the width of the streets in our code.
Yeah.
Okay. Regardless if it's single-sided or both-sided parking?
I think it's standard width, right? Dean,
It's standard width, and so no one has asked for any parking restrictions.
But all our parking on, I think we.
What's
pretty
the,
much do one sided.
how wide is the street?
How wide is the street?
28.
There's only parking on one side of my house.
Dean, I seen that
Yeah.
It's probably.
thing that I pointed out to you.
Specified.
On my map, it says it's an STM, which is a storm system. Storm line that comes off of there. That's not true.
It's probably the same.
It's right here.
Here,
Yes.
that is two curb inlets and a storm pipe that comes down to the detention pond. But that's a low spot in the street, and so it is at that location. So that stormwater is going west into the
So it goes underneath the street?
Goes underneath the street.
Does it go between lots? It's not going underneath the house, is it?
No, again, this is not a lot
That's
line.
green
This
space.
is,
That's green
this
space.
and this whole area is the track. It's just that storm line runs through there, and that's what you're seeing.
And that pond's where that dot's at?
The pond is in this large rectangular section.
That whole thing's gonna be a pond.
The whole thing's gonna be a pond. That's how we get 34% reduction.
Any other questions for Dean?
I don't know if they're Dean questions or not, but,
Ask him.
we got the Article 4 in here, the subdivision design standards. Maybe it's a Jason question, but
Jason or Russ.
or Russ, but dead-end streets and cul-de-sacs, 60-foot limit. Where's that measured from, or does this plan meet that?
So that, yeah, that plan meets that.
Because it's,
But what-
Well, she might step up here just so people are here.
So say your question again, I want to make sure I
I'm
understand.
assuming the planning commission already looked at it, but, it was in the packet, so, just the dead-end streets and cul-de-sacs design standards. And we've adopted, said that, a cul-de-sac should be no longer than 600 feet in length, but then it talks about how it measures that
Correct.
600 feet. So is that to start the cul-de-sac or the intersection of the street?
If it's a dead end,
We're moving on here.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
So the 600 feet basically starts here,
Okay.
like, and it goes, because you can't have a dead end or cul-de-sac 600 feet, which that exceeds over the limit. The only way that is not is if that opens up to that road. That's the only way. That way you've got your two access points. Is what that part says. So
Can you address the parking? So what's our standard on new subdivision parking? Is it one side?
it's one side of the street opposite of the mailboxes. So what we would do is once I assign addresses for lots, I get with the postmaster and I find out exactly what side of the street they're going to put mailboxes on. And the side with the mailboxes would be the no parking side. But that's determined by the postmaster.
Heritage used to be no parking on the opposite side.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
So,
That was a mess.
yeah. So that's why we wanted, going forward, that would be the plan.
Still that way out there? Heritage? No parking on the opposite side of the mailboxes?
Yeah. Which should never, yeah, that's something we should address later on about changing that.
That's why we're asking questions about this, because other developments, the ones go the way.
Correct, for sure.
Thanks, Russ. Any further council discussion, thoughts, comments?
I guess my question is can we even, does this plan even meet the standard? With the, emergency only? I assume the emergency vehicle only wouldn't meet that requirement?
According to the subdivision code, no. If it was only emergency vehicles.
So you're saying the only way to meet the code with this subdivision is to bring it all the way through?
Yeah.
But we could still put a gate up.
I think it falls under interpretation, and I would kind of defer to the city attorney on that one. Because how I interpret it might be different than how they would interpret it, but that's the,
Who's gonna be responsible for the fire at that area? City or the township?
So that property was annexed in. That's kind of a gray area. That would be something we'd have to work out with the county to see how that all aligns.
What was the question, Jerry? I missed it.
Question was, who's responsible for the fire protection
No, that'd be us.
in that area?
It's an annexed city.
City limits.
Yeah.
That'd be us.
There's certain,
But he's saying there's a gray area.
there's a gray area on that.
There's proximity, right? The Palmyra would be closer.
Palmyra would be closer, but they have to, in a way, relinquish their rights to that area, which that has not transpired. So,
And they have a refusal, they can refuse not to do that.
correct.
Yes.
So there'll be fire protection, just depends on whether Palmyra wants to give it up to the city.
Correct.
Well, where I was actually going with this, Scott, but I didn't get there. I'll go ahead and finish it. Is if there was a fire and Palmyra was closer, they could come in on the north end of that, which we're not allowing to happen because we don't want that to go out on the road. And I think in the last discussion we had about this, however long ago it's been, we did discuss the fact that could we turn a fire truck around in the bottom of that cul-de-sac? And I think it was said by the chief our fire chief that yes, he could. Was that correct? Do you remember that?
I don't remember that.
That is correct. So all of those cul-de-sacs are designed for turnaround purposes. There's some that are in town that we couldn't do that are already built. But as we move forward through these new subdivision, that is a minimum standard that we require.
With parking on one side.
parking on one side.
Still turn around.
And, well, it's tight, but I mean, it's, you know, so that's what they say, so that we can do.
That's where I was going.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, that's the issues.
Yeah, you're right.
So,
I just, in my mind, I don't see it. I like to see it turn around with cars on one side. And so you're probably down to about 25 feet, 24 feet, 23 feet.
Yeah, but usually on the cul-de-sac, like I live on a cul-de-sac, there's basically no parking in the cul-de-sac.
I mean, there wouldn't be, if it's legal.
There is.
You can't count on that. So, okay.
They need to get to that fire truck.
and if they need to get there, I mean, they're within the law to
Well,
move anything,
we all agree there needs to be that second access. Nothing else for the vehicles. I think the problem we learned about tonight, unfortunately, is our code says that you can't make it just emergency only. It needs to be a through street.
Once we do that and we make it, then do we take in part of 300 road as a city road and we have to maintain it?
No. But I still think we can put a gate up if we chose to.
Well, I would hope that we can. I would hope that we can make it work.
As far as a fire response goes, if Palmyra was the agency serving that housing development, I don't think it would make much sense to go left on Second and then right on 300. You just down the highway, access it over there. I understand probably, you know.
I think most of it was
I
if
can't-
the highway entrance was blocked for some reason.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, that was, I think, the discussion, yeah. Then it's how are you can get in there?
I'm just saying,
I
it
can't,
would be very
No.
common, yeah.
No.
I can't fathom that if someone's house was on fire, that the neighbor, the surrounding neighbors that live on the county road itself would have much of an objection if that gate was used for the purpose of safety for whoever may be there. I don't know that. Maybe they wouldn't like that. I don't know.
I mean, city attorneys,
But as far as a continuous thing, where they drive in and out, I don't know that.
yeah.
Nice green, to go to.
You can hide the code under there.
Not really.
No, you can't.
Gate.
You have a gate up in front of the easement.
So here's our dilemma, because you walked in kind of midstream.
Please enlighten me.
As we talked about last time, the folks on 300 Road don't want the through traffic.
Correct.
So we talked at one point about just stopping the road. Then the next thing we talked about is the gate there, right? Because within 600 feet, we can't have a cul-de-sac of another cul-de-sac. or-
No, it's just like, just from the start of the subdivision.
From the start, so 600 feet. So if we put a cul-de-sac there, that won't adhere to our subdivision standards, right? So the question is, if we put the street in, can we put a gate across?
That's a question.
You may need to like research those.
Well, no, but so there'd be a gated road, so the access to it would only be from the south, not from the north then on that road. But you could you could unlock it to get access should you need to from the north. But that's not gonna be private, it's not private property or it's not public property like a parking lot, it's gonna be connected on a thoroughfare roadway through the street. I don't want to give you I don't have an answer off the top of my head. I can certainly do some research on that. I think the issue you're going to run into there, though, is that you can certainly block off, and cities do it all the time, parks that are contained, even if roadways on them. If it closes at 10 o'clock at night, there's no entrance to the parking lot, things like that. This is a street that would be active day in, day out, and I don't know. There may just need to be also part of the easement there, then would be it'd be a different requirement, not maybe not an easement, but different requirement to put that gate at the end of that street.
Well, it's a right of way.
Right?
It's
So I can do quick research on that and figure out maybe a variance for that. Because the second question I have is based upon the subdivision, the rules governing subdivision, some discussion about allowing for any variances or changes to allow there to be a cul-de-sac there, or is that something that is not capable of being done based upon the city's regulations and code for that area, for that residential plot?
We got township to take into consideration too.
What's that now?
And have the township to take into consideration.
Okay.
And if you put a gate in there, it's probably gonna have to be recessed because the right of way from the county, township could be right along there and they might not want a gate in there.
Jason,
I'll offer one, yeah, I'll offer some experience. I am,
Just for the record, you're the city's engineering consultant.
yeah, we're the on-call consulting engineering firm for the city,
Or who?
well, BG Consultants.
Okay,
Yeah. So we do a lot of projects around town, and then when requests like this come up to, hey, review this, weigh in on this, provide some comments, we provide some comments on the behalf of the city. And I am not an attorney, but I will say we've got this exact same example in Lawrence. We do this in Lawrence quite a bit. We've had some streets where they are longer than 600 feet as a dead end. And in fact, I can think of one where there is a township road on the north side of it. And we did exactly like what Dean was proposing, where we do a temporary cul-de-sac, go ahead and plat the right of way all the way through like it's going to be built in the future as a through street, and then put a gated with fire access on the city's right of way. So it wouldn't be on the township property on their right of way, but it would be just inside the city's right of way and had an access there. Now, that's a different community. I'll leave it up to your city attorney to advise you on whether you can do that or not, but there are examples close by that have done that, so.
What else?
Thank you, Jason. Any other council discussion?
Sidewalks.
I'll have to call Dean back up. Dean,
Didn't see.
they have questions about sidewalks.
Okay.
Well, maybe beyond 10, because the question is, yeah, so really, it's more of a thing, how are we connecting this plat to the existing heritage plat so that we get them around to the crosswalk that we're hopefully enhancing. So I don't know if there's a plan on record on how we're gonna do that.
Well, I think, one question I have then, Dean, on the north end of the property, would there be right of way or easement for a sidewalk? Or south end, I'm sorry, south end.
There is a utility easement and the right of way is fairly wide. That was in Plat 5A, and the sidewalks were installed with the KDOT project along. Kind of confusing because High Drive kind of comes up and then it turns to the right, but there's sidewalk that we're hooking up to the west side. There is not a sidewalk easement on that, but there's several utility easements that, if it came down to it, that you could, a separate easement could be filed because it would just sit on top of the utility easement on the north side. There's 30 plus feet of utility easement, so there's,
So you're talking along 56 highway?
along 56 highway.
How far off the highway is that easement?
Well, it's where the, and this doesn't show it because this is farther
Yeah.
north, but the right of way that was was in place with 56 highway, it backs up against the KDOT right of way. And I did the sewer, I think it's 30 feet of utility on the property, not on the right of way. That's a utility easement. It wasn't done as a pedestrian easement / utility easement, but it could be.
There's a picture of it, Dean.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Yeah, there's a sewer through here. And again, the KDOT right of way are the two heavier lines. And then that line there is an easement, and the existing sewer that was put in for part of that project is shown there, but I believe it's 30 foot because the sewer was fairly deep there. So we had a wider than typical, so we got more than enough that's already dedicated as a utility easement that could, be dedicated as a drainage or a pedestrian easement as well, if they wanted to get it out of the KDOT right of way.
So just visually speaking, for me, or whoever else might think this way, off the shoulder of the highway, so if you're concerned about pedestrians being close to the highway, how far off would that easement fall away from the shoulder of the road?
Dean, I can help you out.
Thank you. I know I'm asking kind of a strange.
Yeah, the KDOT right-of-way line's basically where the fences are, for the privacy fences for the houses there. And that would be partly the challenge. With this plat, you could have a pedestrian easement platted over that utility easement. It's just a matter of adding the dedication on the plat. But when you get to the west boundary, so right here, you've got one more existing residential lot with a privacy fence there. And so you just have to deal with that, getting across that property somehow. And then it could connect into the sidewalks within Heritage Edition 1.
How, Jason, you deal with KDOT a lot, how willing is KDOT to give an easement on theirs to build a sidewalk?
Depends on the function of the highway, speeds, safety, clear zones.
Oh, you
It actually,
the speed limit through that area with the crosswalk?
well, I mean, well, that's been talked about, but long term, as the community grows, long term, I don't know, maybe it's 5 years, maybe it's 50, I don't know. But as Highway 56 develops out there, I could see it functioning more like what you see in town around Eisenhower, around 6th Street, where you have sidewalks within the KDOT right of way. But those are also an urban environment, slower speeds and all that. Right now you have 55 mile an hour, open ditches, it's more of a rural feel. So getting approval to put a sidewalk in KDOT's right of way now across the existing Heritage Edition is.
Just in that one lot,
Yeah,
just to get over one lot. That's all.
we could ask. I can't give you a probability of what it would be right now. Alternatively to that, the city could pursue an easement across that property and build a sidewalk across a private property rather than KDOT's right of way. That is an option, and then that would connect into Heritage Edition and loop around to the Santa Fe crosswalk.
We have sidewalk in KDOT's right away already. Where the bridge is at, and where the kids want to go to school. On 56 highway.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
We've already got one of those.
But he's saying slower speed limits, or that affects the,
The speed limit there, I think it's 35.
yeah.
40.
Yeah, 55 is where
This is out here.
Yeah, we'd like it to be slower.
Made numerous requests to make it slower. We're waiting on engineers to do a study.
So Plan A, KDOT, Plan B, get easement from that lot. Is there a Plan C? Wasn't there already some easements?
We didn't have any easements coming across on that side of Heritage.
I have a vague memory of something being toward the middle,
Right.
right where that park was.
I thought there was easements between two existing lots.
I think we had, I don't think, nothing for, I think it was utilities, but now you got established neighbors who have fences up and everything else.
They have fences on, that's
We're
an
still doing the
easement.
same thing, we're still got to negotiate because that allows for utilities, it doesn't allow for sidewalks. So, yes, I think you can go on any one of those lots all the way down.
We have another scenario there that hasn't been discussed yet. They got a water line in there, or a sewer line in there. You'd have to be careful where you built your sidewalk, because you couldn't put it over top of that. Now, a cable line, whatever it may be, telephone or whatever, is usually encased, and that wouldn't make much difference. But when you get into water lines and stuff, putting sidewalks over is a little different. But it happens every day.
committed are we to figuring something out?
I think we can figure it out since we're only dealing with, no matter what, probably one lot.
Sounds easy, doesn't it?
But then do you just say, okay, we're not gonna develop this area because we can't connect, I mean,
It's a consideration.
I mean, I certainly value the connectivity of the neighborhoods and the city, and that's why we want the crosswalks, connect heritage. I mean, I get it. I mean,
Not a showstopper, don't you?
well, I don't, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, maybe it's for Jason, somebody who's seen this problem maybe over and over and over again. Somebody who's trying to make a decision soon to move forward with the project. Are we like a 50-50 coin toss here that we won't be able to connect the sidewalks, or do you see a path here?
I would like to think we could see a path, and especially if it's maybe for 100 feet along the privacy fence there, and then veer onto the frontage, or onto the, right on the property line, but off a KDOT right of way for the front yard, might be doable. Yeah, maybe 50-50.
I think there's no way to go around.
Right, there's no other way, yeah. Unless there is something pre-platted from the prior phase that allows you to get along a property line within the development, but I don't know off the top of my head if that's the case or not. So.
So there's no easements in the back of what's existing.
Sound like utility only.
Right. Well, to my,
old heritage.
yeah, on the old heritage, I don't believe there's any pedestrian easements that would allow pedestrian access across a private property from the project you're talking about to the streets and sidewalks within heritage, the old heritage. So it's just a matter of connecting the dots, and the path of shortest, or the shortest path is that one property.
I understand the scenario.
Yeah.
The scenario I threw out is out of line. I understand.
Mhm, yeah.
But I'm trying to look for a safer way, and obviously there's probably not.
Thanks, Jason.
Certainly, there's going to be additional expense for the city to make it happen. I think we have to be committed to that as a council. One and two, then just got to figure out how to make it happen. And then, if it doesn't, it may limit the types of people that move in. Families, kids may choose not to.
Kind of like the heritage subdivision now.
Ideally, we get it connected. Just want to make sure we've done about everything.
Is that everything?
No, that's all I had.
Nothing's been decided.
This is, as I understand it, is going to be green space, is that correct?
I don't know where you're pointing.
Right here.
Higher.
No, it's
No.
not higher.
Up higher.
The next block.
What if that sidewalks comes in behind there and runs down along there before it gets,
And we still gotta get parallel 56 is the problem.
Yeah.
but you get out here in 56, and then you just go across.
That's what we're trying to solve, that 56, north side of 56 to the current heritage sidewalk.
Say that again.
I think we're saying the same thing. It's just, we have to solve that north of 56 that parallels that from the subdivision to the current heritage.
Right. That's the object, to get the alligators out of the hole, then.
I had questions.
Any other council discussion? Not, I'll entertain a motion.
What are we voting on tonight? Just to be clear,
Final plat.
and are we gonna make a decision on the north end of that? How that's gonna be handled?
Yeah, I mean, it's as presented with a temporary
With the temporary,
cul-de-sac.
and the plan would be to gate it.
That's your plan, Dean, temporary cul-de-sac with the gate?
If that's what the council wants.
Well, that's what you proposed, right? So if we approve that, that's what you're proposing to do.
Well, I showed a temporary cul-de-sac because the
Okay.
future plan says it gets
And
connected
we
in that.
decide whether we gate it.
So it's,
And you don't decide whether we get it, I guess the city does. Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, for the good of the city,
Willing to make a motion one way or the other?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do it. I move to approve the Heritage subdivision final plat as presented.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion passes 4-1. Next agenda item, Highway 56. Jason, I'm guessing this is the real reason you're here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I brought a piece of paper. Picture's literally worth 1,000 words, right?
I've been told that.
Glenn, do we have a key to that? Did that AC go off?
I don't know.
It says it's 73 right now, so.
It is not 73.
Not up here.
The lights are really hot, right?
No, I don't have to do that.
What about, can you flip on the fan?
Somebody can put on the fan.
Ceiling fans.
Oh, yeah, ceiling, I didn't know we had.
That ought to make.
I think they're in the
They're in the back.
That ought to make bad noise.
They're back there. They're not. I don't know what those are. Probably just launched them.
Or at least the record.
All right, we tried.
It's one of those.
First world problems.
Okay. There.
It's really loud.
Are you gonna complain about how loud it is?
It just can't win, right?
Holy.
Speak up.
Okay, so I'm here tonight to just give a quick update on the Highway 56 project and maybe get a little bit of feedback or direction from the council on how you want to proceed with this project. Quick history, this project was kind of conceived, well, back in the early 2000s when KDOT was doing a corridor study on Highway 56. And then about 10 years ago-ish, city was talking about trying to redo the Eisenhower, 56 and Eisenhower, and do the little S-curve, line things up, maybe signalize that location. Went through a process, got some KDOT money to help with that project. It then kind of expanded and morphed into something a little bit bigger. What you're looking at here is basically the direction we had from prior councils to proceed with design, and we are basically at 100%. Basically at 100% design complete with the picture that you see here. So it would be curb and gutter and 3-laning Highway 56 basically from where it ends by the liquor store there, going all the way east to First Street. We're looking at a 5-foot sidewalk on the south side, a 10-foot side path, shared trail, shared use path, whatever you want to call it, on the north side. So if you think of North 6th Street going out past the high school, that's what this would look like through there. And then the side street improvements, making some improvements there to the connections to the highway. It's taken a while to get to this point with some easement acquisitions and changes and things like that. Current construction costs have inflated quite a bit. They've ballooned up quite a bit since this project was originally thought of 7-8 years ago. Right now, our current estimate is $2.6 million. I'm going to talk to the numbers on the box on the right side. Current construction cost estimate is about $2.6 million. Your current city-state agreement that is in place, KDOT will pay 100% of that up to $1.673 million. So it basically leaves about $900,000 left for the city, sorry. Oh yeah, I got the right number. Yeah, $900,000 that the city would have to cover on construction costs. And then the only other additional cost that we foresee moving forward would just be the construction engineering, so in the inspection of the project, making sure it goes right. Estimated at $225,000 right there. So you can see that's a little over $1 million that the city would be on the hook for if we went out and bid the project today and wanted to start construction. And we've talked with staff and some of the committee members. There are some options that could be available to the city to try to reduce those costs, overall costs. And the bubbles, if you will, that are kind of in pink highlighted there on the map, could reduce the project cost. If we reduce that out, that would obviously bring the construction cost down. If we eliminate the 10-foot side path, the 10-foot trail on the north side, that would eliminate a significant budget item out of the project. And then we can also approach KDOT and ask them if they would increase their participation rate at least up to $2 million. They fund these programs now up to $2 million. So the thought being, well, if they're doing it now, maybe they would help us and move forward. So if we could have all of those fall in place, if you wanted to approach it in that fashion and reduce the scope of the project and try to bring the city cost down, I think we can get it down to where about the city's remaining cost will be about $400,000 to finish out this project and get it built. Other considerations, if there are, if there is some interest in trying to whittle back the costs even more, would be maybe stopping the project short, moving the east limit back to the west, stopping it about where the police department's at now. That we could look at that as an option. That would cut some costs as well. But that's kind of where we're at right now. Like I said, we're ready to bid it, minus any changes that the council might want to make. So be looking for direction from the mayor and council.
I've asked this before, Jason. When the council that signed this agreement with KDOT approved it, and Glenn, you might have to weigh in. I don't know what the answer was. Did they ever set up a fund and funded that fund for this matching money?
The project's old, it actually predates me, but no, not to my knowledge. We never set anything aside for cost share on this.
So they wrote a check.
They have died. But that's about it.
Yeah, I don't think everybody anticipated it would take this long to escalate to the price that it's at. So usually these projects take 3-4 years from start to finish, but
This is 10 years?
it's pushing. Yeah, it is from when they really got serious and started and had the agreement going down. You're really pushing about 10 years when this was on the original drawing board. So.
These construction estimates are current.
Yes, yeah.
10 years old.
No, they're not 10 years old. No, they're based on recent bids we've had. And I mean, this is I think a fairly attractive project. I think we could get a lot of competition and get prices, but I can't guarantee that it's going to be 2.6 or might be 2.7, might be 2.3. I don't know, but it's based on recent bid averages that we've been seeing. So.
Is there any utility services or anything here you're gonna have to move? Water lines, gas lines?
No, we've coordinated with the water. We're going to re-coordinate with the utilities just to make sure nobody's moved anything into the way. Any private utilities would have to move at their expense. since it is within city rights of way and at the edge of the KDOT. But the city, I think there was a power pole or two that already got moved, and we've designed Eisenhower with the goal of getting over an existing water line without having to relocate it. So we should be good on utilities.
Any other questions for Jason?
Was the genesis of this a realignment of the access roads? Because if you think about this, we're building a 3-lane, 2-lane with a turn lane, right? And it's gonna immediately go back into a 2-lane right after Third Street.
Yeah, I guess what is the back, because nobody's
So-
here.
Sure.
So it's almost like, should we be doing that? I mean, you really want this thing all the way through, or maybe no turn lane. I'm just trying to figure out, this is gonna be completely better section than what it immediately go to right after Third Street. And so we're approving this very small piece of these business access and this access roads. So I'm just trying to figure out what the original intent is.
To the west of here, it is a 3-lane section, so there is a center turn lane to the west of Third Street, all the way basically out to 11th. So going through like past Casey's. So we would connect into that. So this would be,
No gap, it'd be.
there would be no gap. It would be extending that 3-lane section east.
That far back.
Yeah, it ended right at the west edge of
Makes
Eisenhower.
sense then.
Yeah,
And
but
that just goes to First Street?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That just goes to First Street, those 3 lanes?
As proposed right now, I would go to First Street, and we would have a left turn lane for people coming into town wanting to turn and go south on First Street. But it's just a matter of trying to figure out how we go from 2 to 3 lanes and meet all the design parameters and criteria and all of that. So in the future, as we were talking about Heritage, and if this gets
Well, I was gonna say, it'd be nice if you could extend it
to High Street,
the original Heritage,
yeah,
where the crosswalk.
yeah.
This was a grant from KDOT, right?
This was back to one of the questions about how it kind of culminated. Yeah, it started with realigning Eisenhower, and we did a traffic signal warrant study at that time, thinking if it's a path up to the school, we could make that the main crossing for south side of highway to north side, going up to the high school and junior high. It did not meet signal warrants, so that kind of that freed up a line item in the budget to apply towards some other improvements within the corridor. But as soon as we start messing with the alignment of Eisenhower, it makes this access spacing to all the other streets, it kind of screws them all up. So you kind of have to start doing more of it than just one. And that's why we originally looked at not even connecting Washington Street. That's what the corridor plan shows, is Washington Street would not connect to the highway. There was a lot of pushback at that time, because then the only way out, and Second Street would be closed as well. So then the only way out would be over on First Street, which is half of it's not even a city street, and it's all gravel. So KDOT conceded and allowed us to do the connector for Washington Street there. But then the rest of it's just kind of cleaning up access, providing the access to the police department where it's at now, and then the sidewalk and trail improvements as well.
And that,
It would have storm sewer.
that access to the police department, that's not included in this expense, right?
It is. It would be included in these plans to the police department, but not to the new substation.
But I thought when we built that police department, we built it to these standards.
Oh, it's not quite. It's built part of the way out, but there was going to be some grade changes and stuff, so it's.
So it won't be to the full effect of what this shows. It won't be a brand new driveway in.
It'll be brand new at the highway, but somewhere within that right of way, will connect into the existing. So it probably is about what you see there. So I think they built the parking lot out to the
I just know
edge of
when
the
we
right of
built
way.
it, that was part of the discussion, and that was part of the plan, was to build it to these standards, so that way we didn't have to pay for the costs and expenses for us.
Part of they built it as far as they could. But with this, that's a 2-lane section with a small shoulder right now, and so we're gonna widen it 6 feet and add a curb and gutter there, so that changed. It was essentially not feasible to build the entire police department entrance, and assume that it wouldn't get damaged in the process of this project. So there is a little bit of connection tie-in rework, but not much.
Okay. Any other questions for Jason? Thank you, Jason. Anybody else like to speak to this agenda item? If not, we'll close public comment. Glenn, I guess I got a question for you. Where does, if the council accepts all these changes, where does that money come from? The 400,000.
Yeah, we don't have 400,000 right now. We don't have 400,000 cash anywhere we can pull from, and we don't.
But we have to add it, so could add it on to a bond? I guess we did talk about adding it on to the substation.
Yeah, we did talk about it, yeah, that is possible as a public improvement. That's about the only way I can think of right now.
Because we still have that outstanding bond or the outstanding potential of the bond for the generator and the bucket trucks.
Right, that was what I was thinking. Are we using up all of that, or is there some of that left if we do the lease on the truck and generators for part of this?
No, and I don't think you can do that. It'd have to be on something new, a new bond issue.
So we could do a brand new bond instead of doing a lease issue on that stuff. Package it all
Yeah, that's
with
possible.
this. Makes it worthwhile now.
Right, because you don't want to be under $1 million. It's not worth your time to do that.
So then that bond payment is how much? 60,000 a year?
Yeah, the current interest probably pretty close to that.
So where's that money come
Yeah, it's
60,000 on 400,000?
from? No, on 1.4.
Yeah, the total.
Okay, I was gonna say.
Are you trying to imply that you guys spent all the money before I got here?
This was done before we all got here.
Good one.
Nobody in this room was here at that time.
That's what we're saying, Derek, sorry.
That's
Damn,
all
I
right.
like to spend money.
Yeah. No, it either comes from sales or property taxes that go forward. That's transfers from utilities.
So the timing of the payment starts, so there has to be kind of temporary, right? Construction.
Typically, yeah, doing the construction would, so you're probably 2 years out.
You wouldn't do temporary on this, because this is just a match.
Well, you still could if you wanted to.
Yeah, but since we have personal property.
You know what the price is gonna be on this, so there's not a mystery to it.
Only
2 years, so 2026 budget hit?
probably if it was issued this year,
Yeah.
would be the first hit on
2026.
Either 25 or 26.
Remind me, what rolls do?
it. Well, with the generator, purchase and the bucket trucks.
Bucket trucks, I guess, that's the piece
That was about 900,000 to a million, so $1.4 million bond. We talked about just on a lease with local banks with that, but when you get over $1 million, it's more cost effective to go out for that bond issue.
Generators, substation,
Generators,
new trucks,
generators and trucks.
and substation. You got that too.
If we wanted to roll it all in one bond, include the substation, but we already issued the temporary bonds on the substation for construction. We haven't issued the bonds for the generator or the trucks. We haven't done anything with that yet. So those are the only outstanding items.
So, yeah, I think, so 2026 budget impact. I remember our new ordinance, how do we, so I think what we need to do is establish where this, how we're gonna pay for this. And, is it just general property tax, sales tax proceeds?
Even though it takes on our electric fund. Because the majority of the bonds.
Right,
are-
so I guess my question is, how specific do we think should get to figure out, next council, this council's already decided on how this should be paid. And they can change it, but at least it's been thought through that this is the way we would recommend. So,
I almost would like, I think it makes sense to me if it's a $1.4 million bond and $1 million is coming out of, for electric stuff, and 400,000 for this, then you assign a percentage saying 80% comes out of the, actually, more like 90% comes out of the electric fund, and 10% comes out of the general.
How are we taking money out of electric fund when we don't have it?
We're identifying where this goes. 2 years down the road, our electric fund changes quite a bit because of our power purchase agreement. Renegotiations.
so as we go through that budgeting process where they want to buy a new truck and all that, this will already be stuck in there as a cost that needs to be in there, and then
We're barely receiving enough money to pay for the electricity we have now.
Right now,
And you say it's gonna change, I thought that changed from 3 to 8, did that not change?
what change?
Electricity, we're gonna get.
No, the one, what's the name of the contract? The
power purchase agreement.
which
Yeah,
one?
that's it.
The one that comes off in 2 years.
Oh, the
That's the GRDA.
The GRDA comes off in 2 years, and then we get to get cheaper energy. So that, well, I not guarantee that.
More than likely.
So,
Better than not chance.
Yeah.
You want me to go through some more terminology?
Okay, that's a good point, though. I think we do need to think about, because we talked about potential new PPAs, how far ahead of that can we get with some of those to make sure that we can figure them out? Can we get 2 years ahead of when GRDA falls off?
Just for a second here.
I think I know what you're asking.
Educate us.
Yeah, I'll
talked about it.
real quick. Yeah, when you do a bond issue, we got probably three things we do for you. When you do that, you'll have to identify the sources of those funding. So it's a legal contract when you go out for that. So we'd have to make a decision at that time where it's coming from. At the end of the day, because it's a general obligation bond, you're pledging, it'll say, have the language about the full faith and credit, which means you're backing with your property tax. If everything else fails, that's why you get a lower rate on that. Typically, you're putting everything. So,
I think the question was, I think to Jerry's point is, how far ahead of our power purchase agreements can we get to know that in 2 years, it's gonna go from where it is to that?
yeah, I wouldn't even go in that direction. What you're doing, because you have a franchise fee on that, that's what transfers to the general fund that would help pay off anything that you can, because once it gets to the general fund, then you can use it for that, for whatever purposes. It's just like another tax at that point. But I get the mayor's point.
90% from the electric fund, then if we have lower power rates,
Yeah,
we pass most of that on, we have to save enough to pay for this.
right, yeah.
So we don't know. I guess
You won't know, until we do the purchase power agreement.
So the question is how far ahead of start dates do you do those contracts?
Right now, we're in negotiation with those contracts right now. I mean, because 3 years is actually getting kind of tight to do that. So, yeah, that's what we're looking at, the solar project for the Pratt, and we're also looking at doing more community solar.
Okay.
That would replace the
So
GRDA.
we should be able to know what that would look like from.
Next year, yeah, you don't want to push it beyond 2 years, because the time is too tight by the time you get a new.
4 more years to figure it out.
So,
Yeah.
to answer your question, we will know next year if our purchase power costs go down in 2026. Because of GRDA falling off and something we may be able to negotiate that's better that
Yep.
will turn on. So that needs to happen next year.
That's
Right.
wishful thinking.
No, that's,
I hope it goes that way.
well,
Well, we got,
And
we
I
won't
hope-
know,
Yeah.
we will know. I mean, it's not.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna know,
Right.
one way or the other.
right.
So then we get the whole rate discussion.
I don't think we can continue with franchise fee forever either.
What's that?
All you're doing is putting a Band-Aid on something that's gonna have to come back and get fixed someday. You're gonna have to actually charge what the actual rate is.
Yeah, I think we are. I think the electric fund reserve, you know, if you remember the budget discussion, it's where it needs to be. So we're not underwater in that fund. But if costs keep going up, we don't change, or we can't get costs down, then at some point it will become a problem. It isn't today.
No, but it
Could
can
be.
be, it can become a problem.
Right. So that's what we gotta go try to figure out.
And the funding you're talking about in the electrical fund, obviously, there's not enough in there to do what we need to do at this point. And the only way to put money back into it is on the other side. And you use a chip franchise fee, you're not putting money back in electricity, you're putting it in another account. If I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, that franchise fee goes to the general fund, can be used for.
Anything.
Yeah.
I understand that.
But that's what Glenn's saying, is that franchise fees are already going over there, so we can use that to pay for this.
But you're gonna have to take money out of the franchise fee to cover the electricity in some instances.
We'll see where the contracts go. We don't know yet, but you have a valid point. If it gets worse, that's the whole rate conversation. It's what are your contracts to purchase power? What are their terms? And then that's gonna say your rate structure, and you need to go charge so that you are not underwater in that fund.
If you get a contract to say for a certain period of time, like 10 years or.
Yeah, what are they normally?
8 years.
The terms?
20 years.
20 years?
Yeah, you want to really go, 20 years would be typical in this environment, and that'd be a long-term contract.
3.5 to 20 years would be great.
Well, that's what we're looking at there. So
We
anyway.
had this conversation back when we were talking about the energy solar field. We kind of turned it down because that Pratt came in so much lower, and we kind of had a discussion like, well, do we still move forward with the energy since the GRDA is coming off, you know? Because I don't know, if these more Pratt deals and the wind's getting cheaper and the solar's getting cheaper, I mean,
So anyway,
that is the trend that it's going.
It is, but the curveball now is there's so much grant money out there that, USDA now has a grant, that's a competitive grant for community solar power. So we're looking at that. We're going to submit a letter of interest for that. And so that may be another option. So it may be something like industrial solar plus another smaller community like we have now, 1 or 2 megawatts. So it may be a combination there that works out depending if you can get that grant money. So, but everything's in flux. That's what happens in the electric world right now. So if you just stop today and got your contract, it'd be very different than it would be 60 days from now or whatever. All these things, it depends on what the price of solar panels is and what, all this. There's so many variables at work. It's hard to predict what's going to happen in the next 6 months. But the signs are pretty hopeful that we can get some pretty good renewable energy at a decent price out there. That's lower than what we're currently paying. But I can't guarantee that until you actually have an offer on the table,
Right.
which we're getting that direction.
where we're at in this discussion, we can't give that man the answer.
We don't have a choice.
Well, you got to find the money somewhere. I mean, that's just,
Yeah, to go back to the original discussion, Jerry, you brought up the good point of, where's that money in the electric fund gonna come from? And that's where we kind of got on the energy conversation, but the trucks and the generators, they have to come from the electric fund. I think that's, you put it in there and you find out when it comes time. Before. But it should be broken down that way. I agree. Yeah. I heard it too. I think
Yep.
okay.
What would the cost be different, with the lease things you were talking about, the generators and trucks? What would the cost to the electric fund be compared?
It's actually gonna be under a bond, especially a longer term bond, it's gonna be cheaper. And a bond is typically a lower interest than local banks can offer. To issue a bond so expensive, you have to almost hit a threshold to make it worthwhile, otherwise the money that you're paying to issue that bond.
The closing costs.
Yeah, exactly what it is. You don't get a
Too small
return on your
longer.
lower interest rate. So that's kind of it. So we've always used, if you're not over $1 million, you don't issue a bond.
So funny, you don't think we know that?
I hope you don't have to
I'm
change,
just looking out for my committee.
Absolutely.
I hope you don't have to change that
What?
over $1 million.
Don't have to change it?
I said, I hope.
That your rule of thumb,
Oh.
yeah,
I hope not.
You're going to. Inflation stays inflation.
It ain't getting better.
Okay.
What do we need to do on this?
Well, we need to approve this plan with the changes as presented so that Jason can get it out, right?
Yeah, I'm just looking for a general direction from the council. You know, whether, I don't know that it needs to be a formal motion, however you want to place that, or if it's just, if the majority of the council's generally in favor of.
I think it'd be best as a motion.
Okay, perfect.
Can you tie in easement access north of 56 for sidewalk?
Bigger bond.
No, I'm just kidding.
It's like supersizing McDonald's.
Yeah.
Just give us
While
this
we're here.
like a few cents.
One more little fry.
Go ahead and throw the Heritage Crosswalk in there.
But don't stop there, right?
I would say just make it a list of demands.
I'll just solve all our problems.
Yeah.
None of these changes are really like catastrophic for me personally. I hate losing the sidewalk on the north side, especially, I mean, given we just had a tough conversation about north 56 sidewalk access, but this is in town and you have options across the way. Is there anything that jumps out to anyone else regarding some of these changes? It's a lot to trim.
Yeah. I agree with you, the sidewalk.
It's a bummer.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
It's
still,
the easiest to
it'd
cut,
be
though.
a sidewalk to nowhere.
Right,
Right.
yeah,
Right. No, it literally stops in that field.
yeah.
So what do we, so you can give guidance on, I guess the reduction is what you're already looking at?
Yeah.
All, some, or?
The reductions are what get us to us.
I know, what do you,
Yeah.
should you say all of them?
The only one that I kind of have maybe an issue with, and maybe somebody can coach me through it, that apron that goes into the 56 lot, I mean, if we remove that, does that gonna have any impact on us selling that lot or using it for anything else?
Because we still have an access point, so whoever would to purchase that lot,
I thought we didn't have an access point.
there's already an apron there.
Yeah, there is kind of a rough apron there, but,
The one further to the right is what,
I'm looking at one dead center of that
I
triangle.
know, but I think the ones we were,
Oh, yeah.
I think
Yeah, I
the
see
ones
it.
where, the one where the lot we were trying to sell
Yeah.
didn't have it.
Right.
I think it's that one there. It's no longer-
This one.
No. What's this one? I'm thinking about this one.
Oh, yeah, that one. The main one's still there.
The main one's still there.
Yeah. Yeah, you lose one of the two.
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the thought with where the old motel used to be and now the substation going there is as they develop their substation and figure out what they need, that could be part of that project. It could be part of this project too. It just depends on money, I guess.
Roughly how much is one?
Say maybe 10 to 15,000.
So then you're saying the larger the circle, the more cost saving.
Well, generally speaking, yeah. I totally didn't mean it that way, but yes.
Certainly linear footage.
Yeah.
Once it becomes an ellipse, it gets real.
Yeah.
I'm good with the changes.
Regular circle is one better.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to accept the reductions recommended by the project engineer for the Highway 56 project.
Second.
Move the second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item is the RHID for the High Street.
All right, looks like, we want to make a public comment. Susan?
I apologize for not emailing you sooner.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Got a picture of
Not going to read these. More to support what I have to say, so. All right, I'm Susan Buffington. I live at 126 East High Street. There is a Polish saying that essentially translates to force a door which is already open. This expression is typically used to describe a situation where a lot of effort, time, money, etc. is being spent to solve a problem that has already been solved or didn't exist in the first place. Up for discussion tonight is a proposal to establish another rural housing incentive district to meet housing needs within Baldwin City that were outlined in a housing needs analysis dated January 28th, 2022. I will do my best to keep this quick and simple, but I have also provided copies of my statement that include additional support and my sources of information. Before I get into the housing needs analysis report itself, I want to point out the fact that the housing needs analysis dated January 28th, 2022 has already been used to establish a plan dated February 1st, 2022 to utilize the incentive program to develop 7 other properties, including the Heritage Plan on the agenda tonight. The existing plan is to create 300 new housing units over the next 10 years as a solution to the housing needs analysis. At least 3 of these properties were set in motion during 2022 and are planning to provide 100 of those 300 housing units in the next 2 years. Since the council has already provided a plan to cover the suggested needs of the analysis, any additional proposals should include new and/or additional analysis that substantiates the need for incentives to be given to generate more housing than those 7 areas will already provide. In other words, forcing a door that is already open. Again, that is 300 housing units already planned for over the next 10 years, with 100 already in works, and this newest proposal is implying that additional incentives are needed for even more housing to be developed in Baldwin during that time. If a developer is aware of the true housing needs in Baldwin City now, and over the next 2 or 10 years, and they are aware of the already planned development of 300 housing units, and they still want to develop more housing units on top of that, then that is their decision to make. However, there is no reason for the city to provide an incentive by offering to take on the developer's cost to develop additional property at the cost of property taxes that could be used by the city and the school district to make improvements that are desperately needed. I will provide some quick numbers for perspective. At my work, we call these back of the napkin calculations. We may not know what the exact numbers will be, but we can provide pretty accurate estimates based on known factors and estimates that have already been provided. The full calculations and sources used are in the packet I have provided. If you would like more information on how I came to these amounts, the calculations are outlined in Exhibit A. I used the assumed average home value in Baldwin of $250,000 and 2022 tax rates. The existing incentive established in February 2022 will already cost the city around $1.8 million or $350,000 per year, and will cost the school district $2.1 million or $425,000 per year. Tonight's proposal will cost the city and the school district each an additional $500,000 or $100,000 per year. While I am assuming these incentives will only cover 5 years of property tax, they could cover up to 25 years. I have opted to go with the smaller amount, but if I'm wrong, the cost to the city and the school district would be even more significant than what I've presented. The city's portion are funds that would primarily be used to create and maintain streets, curbs, sidewalks, etc. And where will these funds be coming from instead? So not only will you be creating more costs for the city, you will be, I lost my place. You will be taking away any funds that would typically be used to cover these and other costs. Please do not create an even bigger burden on the citizens that have elected you to represent them. By approving this additional incentive now is the time to be the leaders that we need you to act and to act in the best interest of the citizens of Baldwin and ensure affordable housing in Baldwin by reducing the cost of owning a home here. Now, on to the housing needs analysis dated January 28th, 2022, which is the basis for all of these housing incentives. Baldwin City's website notes this analysis as enough numbers and charts to satisfy the geek in anyone, and explains in detail why Baldwin City needs more housing and what our challenges are specifically. This is a 12-page report, and while I do agree that Baldwin will continue to grow and there will be a need for additional housing, this report is extremely flawed. There are contradictions, inconsistencies, miscalculations, and illogical assumptions. There's too much for me to address all of it here, so I will focus on the 3 main points that are at the foundation of this housing needs analysis. Page 1, paragraph 4, in Baldwin City, an average lot sells for approximately $45,000 in Lawrence, $45,000. In Lawrence and the Kansas City metro area, the average lots sell for $50,000 to $80,000. The difference in lot price causes developers to invest and build in the larger metro areas rather than in our small community. This is the basis for the argument that incentives are needed, essentially because lots are cheaper in Baldwin. Developers are more likely to go somewhere else to build a comparable house to ultimately make less money. So we need to make it even more cheaper for them to come here and build here. Maybe I'm missing something. Possibly there was more to this thought and the support just didn't make it into the analysis. But I have nothing else to go on, so I'm just going to leave it there. The housing market needs, page 1, paragraph 5, references housing market data for 2019 to 2020 and states during that time frame, fewer than 15 homes were on the market on any given day. From this, readers are to assume this is a very low number and therefore more houses in the market are needed. This seems like a very small amount if you aren't giving any perspective. There are 2 key missing pieces. The first is owner-occupied housing. Table 9 on page 9 does provide this number as 1,082 for 2017. That means approximately every 11 houses represents 1% of the households in Baldwin. If there are 15 homes on the market, that is the equivalent of 1.4% of the homes in Baldwin. Now, how does that compare to similar communities? I've provided some screenshots in Exhibit B of the U.S. 2020 census data that relates to households. This includes household information for Baldwin, Wellsville, Eudora, and Lawrence, and includes the homeowner vacancy rate for each of the cities. While Baldwin is on the lower end for the 2020 census, the difference between Baldwin, Wellsville, and Eudora is only 1 or 2 houses. Is there a need for more houses on the market in Baldwin? Probably. Is there a need for 300 or even 30 more houses on the market in Baldwin? That might be a little extreme. Population trends, page 1, paragraph 2 states from 2010 to 2017, Baldwin City's population grew by an annual average of 2.8% and is projected to continue to grow through 2020 and beyond. The paragraph goes on to reference Table 1 found on page 2. The significant population growth is another factor being used to support the need for 300 new homes in 10 years. However, if you actually do the math on it, the growth rate from 2010 to 2017 is 2.8%, which is over 7 years and not an annual growth rate. The actual annual growth rate would be about 0.4%, or the calculated growth rate of 2.8 divided by the 7 years that it covers. There's a more complicated calculation that gives almost the same results, so we'll just keep it simple with that, but I did include the compound annual growth rate in Exhibit C as well. Taking the actual annual growth rate of 0.4% and the 2020 Baldwin City population of 4,826 reported by the 2020 U.S. Census, the population increase over 10 years would only be 200 people. Based on the 2020 U.S. Census, the average household in Baldwin has 2.92 people, so that would justify only 68 households in 10 years, which is significantly less than the 300 households planned for and already approved for this incentive. I have included my calculation and support in Exhibit C. The 2020 U.S. Census does provide more current data than when the analysis was initially compiled. The second analysis in Exhibit C looks at the population growth from 2010 to 2020, which was actually higher than the 2010 to 2017 increase. Using the higher annual growth rate, the estimated population growth over 10 years is still only expected to be about 342, which justifies 117 new households. The 3 properties that have already been approved for the incentive in 2022 were projected to provide 100 households, which comes close to meeting Baldwin's needs for housing over the next 10 years. In conclusion, a full analysis of Baldwin City's housing needs does show that the city will continue to grow and that we will need new houses to accommodate that growth. However, the developments already in process are by themselves almost enough to satisfy Baldwin's needs over the next 10 years. Overdeveloping and saturating the market with houses will only create more issues. And I think we kind of saw that with the previous discussion about sidewalks and funds, and it all just kind of came together for me. So I can email this to you guys would like. And if you have any questions or want me to expand on any of them, I can.
Have you introduce yourself, by the way?
I thought I did.
You might have.
I'm Susan Buffington,
Okay. And
126 East High Street.
now this is obviously very good information. Lot to digest. I think we covered some of it, in previous council. But I appreciate you putting it together.
You're welcome.
You did a very good presentation, Susan.
Thank you. Shaking that. So, all right. Thank you.
So what's on the agenda tonight, what Susan's addressing is approving the bid for that new subdivision that's been proposed. Obviously, plats haven't been approved, et cetera. So open it up for council discussion. We're calling it the Trail View plat subdivision.
So we're basically just doing this for a hearing, right?
So the way it works, yeah. So the developers typically don't move forward, or part of their decision to move forward is whether they get this RID approval to bake into their pro forma on what they want to do. So this decision would tell the developer whether the city wants to include them in this program. Then they would still go forward with the plat, the whole process that we've been through on the Heritage Phase 2, and all that would continue. So this is just signaling that we approve this developer to utilize this program. I think, the only thing I will comment on, from what I heard Susan talk about is, it's, to me, there's a couple things. There is no cost to the city. What we're doing is we are foregoing our portion of the property tax that we would get if they were to build here. So if they never build, it didn't cost us anything and we didn't gain anything. So there is no cost for us to do that, right? It's just an abeyance, and so until they start putting houses on them and start generating property tax, then that's where the developer starts making back this RID, this part of that. That's how they get this incentive. If they never build a house, they don't get it. No property tax generated, because that's the vehicle for them to do that. So it really is, and I think Susan touched on it, it really is, developers are not going to come in here if we're oversaturated. So that's their business. They try to figure out where they're going to go invest for the quickest, best return. Eudora, Lawrence, that's what they do. So we could annex a lot more property, and if we're oversaturated, we're not going to have any developer interested in building houses here. And typically, they don't build a bunch of spec houses, right? It's build to order. So I'm fearful that we see this as a cost to the city. It's it's really an investment the city makes in deferring property tax revenue. So it might be, in NRP it's 5 years, it might be 20 years on RID. But for the next 100, we get all those property taxes that we would never have gotten if they never built here. So in my head, fundamentally, that's how I think about this program. It's incentivize them, deferring our benefit until a later date to incentivize them to come here instead of other places that, you know.
How long does it take us to recover?
Takes us to recover. Well, it depends on the size of the RID program. So you're saying we didn't lose, it didn't cost us anything other than opportunity cost, right? So
It's only opportunity cost.
it's an opportunity cost. So,
But only if you're growing anyway.
the question is, I think you're asking is, if they would come in here and build without these programs, we certainly shouldn't offer them. Because if we start making property tax day one, we'd all be for that. But we've had the past how many years, and we've not seen any interest in developers coming in here and just on their own risk and pro forma analysis build here. So the reason we really wanted to get into RID is to incentivize them to do that.
It was a response to stagnation in building.
Right.
What'd you say?
It was in response to stagnation in building.
And you know, so the county and the school district, they all have to be on board as well, right? So they're deferring property tax as well. So they have to be fully on board with what the long-term end result of this is.
Are they doing this in Lawrence? Are you doing it?
You have to have a certain
It has to be
population.
60,000 or
Yeah, I
less.
think they're too large. You want to address this question? I don't have the Eudora answer.
Yeah, neither one of them are, as far as I know. Yeah, Lawrence would actually be too large for the program, so rural housing is it. So we were not eligible because of the population of the county until about 4 years ago. They readjusted the population number, so we would qualify. But I don't think Lawrence as a metropolitan area would qualify for RID.
What population do we no longer qualify?
Oh, I forget what it was.
60.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's 60, it sticks in my head.
In the thousands.
Yeah, it used to be a lot lower but they counted the entire county, not just the city. So there was a city versus county element to it, yeah. So they rolled that
Towns out in
back.
Western Kansas, like, benefited a lot from.
Yeah, and that's what it was targeted for, but then, actually, our Senator Tom Holland brought the bill forward and sponsored it to adjust those numbers. So now we do qualify for that. So that's how it got here. So, and as far as I know, Eudora does not do that. But as far as comparing housing right now, last year, Lawrence had fewer than 100 home sites developed in the city of almost 100,000 people. Eudora, I'm not sure. Right now, the housing market in Baldwin City, today, there's 2 houses on the market. That's it. That's total. And that's typical for us. I don't know when the last time we saw 15. That would be a high. The last housing development we had here was Fire Tree 20 years ago. We really haven't had well, there have been some smaller ones, but I mean, a regular housing development, there'd be 30, 40, 50 houses developed at one time.
This thing that Jeff's doing out there, is it selling out? Is that already?
He hasn't started yet. We did approve the RID for that. I actually have the Mylar plat on my desk. Mr. Grove delivered that. He hasn't broken ground on the new subdivision yet. He hasn't.
That's the money he was working on.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, he hasn't started that yet. So I don't remember the last phase. There's 2 more phases that could go in Fire Tree. And so we approved a RID for 1. And there's another phase in there they could do later on, but I'm not sure when they're going to do that.
In your experience, in your position, in your experience, how long will it take us to get enough people to build houses to fill that up?
Yeah, if I knew, if I could guess the market on that. Yeah, because you'll see, the point is to have different varieties of housing rather than just upper end housing or lower, middle. So what'll happen in each one of these subdivisions will be a little bit different. So they'll have different types of housing in each of them. So that's why we're kind of spreading it out, because I think the ones that'll develop in the Heritage too that we talked about the plat tonight, there'll be a mixture of single family, multifamily, of course, commercial up front and whatever. The ones probably out in Fire Tree were more toward the middle income, and the one off the High Street were probably more upper income type of homes, I would guess. How long it would take? It's really going to take, how fast is Panasonic going to build their plant? How many businesses will they have? How many people will want to live in Douglas County versus Johnson County? Don't know. Those are too many unknowns for me to give you a date. What the RID does, though, for a developer, it incentivizes them to quickly build, sell, because that's how they're going to get their money back. Because they're going to lay out the infrastructure money and they're going to get back over time. But that's only with the assessed valuation increasing. So the more they sell and the quicker they develop, the more they can pay off what they laid out at the beginning. So there's a little bit of risk for them involved in it. And then, it's paid off over time. Exactly when it's going to happen, I have no idea. If I were able to do that, I probably wouldn't be standing here. My consulting fees would be extremely high if I could actually give you that estimate. But I couldn't really even guess.
Do you agree that the middle class is disappearing?
Yeah, and it's a real problem for us. We have typically lacked the middle class housing here in Baldwin City. So what we have are typically upper end or rentals that are lower end type. So this is every small town across Kansas, probably across the United States, has that exact same problem. Is how do you get those affordable middle class homes to be built? And this is one way to do that. We have the NRP, which basically incentivize single homes one at a time. It's not going to incentivize a district. So if I were building a home on my own somewhere and I had a lot, that'd be very attractive because you get 5 years of tax rebate on that. But as a developer, you're going to want something like the Rural Housing Incentive District, which then, captures all that assessed valuation, and then you pay off your infrastructure through that. So that's what I would look at, and that's why we've had 3 come real quick. It's because they're looking at that versus the NRP. So, I don't know if that helps you.
What helps me is like when I think about, towns like, and maybe they're taking advantage of it in some way or another, but I couldn't imagine like Spring Hill or DeSoto, towns that are just blowing up.
Yeah, they will never do
It no
this.
sense for them to do RID,
Yeah.
because they're gonna be, that's property tax money they could already be capturing.
Yeah, the one that's, the town or the city that's probably used RID more than anybody else, and it's become sort of a guidepost for everybody else, believe it or not, is Dodge City.
Right.
They have a
Those are
number
TIF
of,
districts, right?
but they have, I don't know how many RIDs they got down there, because early on, they adopted it 20 years ago or whatever, and then because of their population and location, they were able to do that, and they were kind of the model for everybody else. I've been to conferences where they do a lot of presentations on RIDs and whatever like that, so they're kind of the model for it. They've been very successful, so Dodge City has grown over time, and a lot of it's due to the Rural Housing Incentive District down there. I see the future for us and for other cities is it's housing, it's residential development. We used to go out and chase a lot of businesses, try to bring them in, and that's still possible to do that. But I think it's finding the housing, because you got so many people now working from home, some of the time, all the time, whatever. You need to find the workers there. That's going to be the key, because if they've got high-speed internet and they've got whatever they need at home, they're not going to go commute into the office anymore, in Kansas City if they don't have to, and many of them do not have to do that anymore. So what you're doing is you're trying to capture those people more than anything else. Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be the future, as you get more remote worker, because that's just. I think the pandemic just accelerated that trend. I don't think it created it. I think it just accelerated it. So I think you'll see more and more of that, and the market for office space is not what it used to be, but there's a huge demand for housing all across the country. We're not different than anybody else. So I just see it as the best way going. Scott talked about it. Really is no risk to us, because the developer is going to lay that out, and then we're just delaying what we get out of it. Right, and the school and the county, we've already notified. They know about the program. We did tell them about it. They're on board with it, and they do when we have our public hearing in September, because that's what we're doing. We're setting the public hearing for the ordinance that does create the RID. Then they would have the ability to come in and object when we pass the ordinance. They have the ability to change their mind and come in and say, now we don't think that's a good idea, now we're pulling out. They could actually do that. But, we went and talked to them about how many months ago, and they saw this as a way forward to increase housing here in Baldwin City. So,
I will say one more thing, just for people who are listening, just a kind of a run over of what, we don't sacrifice the property tax that's already being taxed. It's
No.
the improvements on that property. So if
Right.
whatever it's been taxed at up to this point, we're still getting that tax money.
well, in this case, it's a little better because we're talking about a high street, actually, they changed the name to Trailview or something like that. That was outside the city, so we were getting zero tax on that. So we annexed it and we're going through the rezone, whatever. So as it's sitting there now, it'd be taxed as agricultural land, which would be extremely low. So that sets the baseline. All the people who are getting taxed off that school in the county still get that tax. But the increment above that, that's what's captured and paid for the infrastructure. That stays in the RID until the infrastructure is paid off. So, yeah, if that's where you're going with that, that's right. So, yeah, you're not taking money from somebody who's getting it right now, but they're getting very little, and we're getting really nothing off of
The
it.
clock doesn't start on that until they develop it.
That's right.
Now, I'm guessing that's a building permit that triggers that.
Well, we sign a development agreement with them is what happens, and that spells out exactly then who's going to pay for what and how that's going to be paid over time. So it's a very lengthy document, but it's all the same for all three of them, so we're getting pretty good at it by now. So anyway, that's kind of written in a nutshell. So what this resolution, this is actually more complicated than I thought it was when we started. There's two resolutions that lead up to the public hearing. We have an ordinance, and then the ordinance actually passes it. Then you have to sign a development agreement, so it's like a 4-step process. I thought we just passed an ordinance, so that was going to be it, but no.
You worked in government.
Yeah, I should have known better, but good God, the state statute on this is really thick and it's really complicated. But I think for a reason, they don't want anybody to abuse the program and they want everybody to understand what it is. So there's multiple chances to have public hearings, multiple chances to have interventions, discussions, whatever you need. So, and we got some of that here tonight, so that's all good. Anyway, enough of that, huh?
Scott?
Yeah, all we're doing here tonight is approving or not approving, setting a hearing date for this Friday.
I agree with what you said and the way it works, and I understand the way it works. The thing that I don't like about it, and I know I don't go against it. The thing I don't like about it, and I don't like it probably any place else I mean, is the fact that we lose that 5-year tax revenue. I understand the reason for it. It's an incentive to get someone to come in here and build a house. But anyway, that's my problem. But I agree with what you said earlier about it. We lose nothing by doing it. So you want to make your motion to get it started?
Is that, you get it? I'll, open for any motion now. In the hearing.
I move to adopt the resolution setting the hearing date for the Trailview Rural Housing Subdivision.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? 5-0.
Just
Next, council committee reports, budget finance guide.
We did not have a meeting since the last committee meeting. Our next meeting is this Friday, 7:45 a.m., second floor of City Hall.
Community development court.
We've not met, we meet next on the 21st, 4 o'clock, second floor City Hall. It's the third, right?
No, 28th.
It's the 4th. It's the 4th Monday. That was the third. We
That
do this
is,
every.
that is the fourth Monday.
Okay, all right, 28th, sorry, scratch that. We meet on August 28th, second floor City Hall.
Counting to board of operators.
We had this conversation.
They didn't ask this when you run. They don't have like a, can you count?
We need to do that.
Yes.
Public safety student.
We have not met since the last city council meeting. We begin Tuesday the 8th at 4 o'clock.
Public works, Julie.
We have not met either, and our next meeting is August the 10th at 9 o'clock.
Strategic planning stuff.
Staying with the trend, we have not met since last meeting, and our next meeting is this Friday, 2 p.m., second floor City Hall.
City administrator staff comments, anything further?
Real quick. Yeah, what's this now? No, it's nothing that, no, hey, come on here, you guys are getting out in front of me here. Just a couple things. On next Monday, I've been invited to actually be part of a renewable power symposium out of Kansas State. I'll be doing a little presentation out there, and that'll be, I think, pretty interesting. A lot of people from a lot of the big state power companies will actually be there. I think this is the first one they've ever done. I've never heard of it before. So anyway, I'm honored they asked me to do that. So they've heard about Baldwin City. They heard about all the renewable stuff we're doing. So we're kind of now being used as an example there for renewable power. But speaking of power, the other night we had a storm roll through pretty hard. A little harder than I thought it was even forecast. We lost power for about 12 minutes. What happens, our outside feed, it actually didn't get cut, but Evergy was losing so many customers whenever they're switching power around, this is the way I understand it. And when they did that, it knocked us offline. Our guys got down there, and we're still getting power. So we didn't lose one of the feeds or anything like that. They just shocked us and knocked us offline. So they put us back on power. Our guys came in and stayed all night at the power station in case it got cut again. Because those storms are coming south mainly. And I just got a text from Jeff Winkler. He's actually down there helping Ottawa today. They still got people out of power down there in Ottawa today, and so our folks are helping them out. We do that all the time. We got problems, they get up here if they can, and we're down there. So they got a lot of people out of power south of us, and I haven't heard the updated numbers on Evergy, but I think they took a pretty big hit too. So anyway, we got a little piece of that. We got the rain and we got the pyrotechnics, but we stayed online all but that 12 minutes. I think it was right after midnight. Boom, it went out. But anyway, so we got back, and I don't think we ran at all that night that happened. We stayed there as precautionary. So anyway, it's enough about power and that kind of stuff. So anyway, all right.
Thank you. Council comments? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Been moved to second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed nay. Motion passes. We're adjourned.